Witchers, welcome back to the Witcher Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots, and I'm here with my best frenemy, Toasty. And Toasty, we're doing another Bestiary episode today, and I have one question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Wyverns. This is another one of those moments where Toasty just doesn't talk.
I should have expected that.
I thought you would too. I was like,
set with myself.
Oh man. Today's episode is about wyverns. Wyverns? How do you pronounce it?
I say wyverns, honestly.
Wyverns, not wyverns.
Yeah.
Wyverns.
Probably subconsciously been trying to avoid jokes like that all of my life.
Right. Yep. Well, there you go. So, another Bestiary episode. And like many of these other episodes, we're going to dig into what we know about wyverns in the games, in the books, and in each of the games. And sometimes things are a little bit different depending on which of the games they were in and how they worked and the methods for dispatching them if you are a witcher. And then we're going to get into some real world mythology about the origins of the creatures and what they might have actually been drawing from for the books or from the games. So where do we start, Toasty?
As always, we start with a journal entry or bestiary entry. Wyverns are unlucky to be frequently mistaken for dragons. Seeing a reptile approaching a flock of sheep, peasants panic. They expect it to breathe fire, massacre everyone, and abduct the local virgins. While it is true that wyverns hunt sheep, they neither breathe fire nor lay waste to whole villages, and they are completely indifferent to virgins.
They don't care about virgins at all, but they do need to eat sheep, it seems.
Yep. So wyverns, or in the elder speech, Wyverns, just a V. Wyverns, depending, are an endangered species of the ornithosaurs. We're getting back to that fun word.
Ornithosaurs. Yeah, it sounds like a type of dinosaur, but
I think that's the idea behind it, because it's like this, and basilisks were ornithosaurs, so the very like a reptile type creatures.
Yeah.
Ornithosaurs with snake-like legs, snake-like necks, and long tails.
We're off to a real great start today. We're basically going to turn this wyvern into a Netflix monster by the end of this episode.
I just like that. I just like said that. Then it was also like
snake-like legs.
Absurdity. Snake-like legs, because snakes don't have any damn legs. Right. So it's like snake-like necks and long tails that end in a venomous trident adorned almost fully in dark scales. Their menacing teeth allow the creature to swoop down from the sky, easily snatch their prey, and carry it off to their nest, not caring if it is sheep or man.
So as long as it's meaty and they can eat it, then they're happy?
Essentially, yeah. So moving on to The Witcher 1. In the game, wyverns do not appear until chapter 2, where they are initially restricted to Wyvern Island in the northern part of the swamp.
And this is normal. Like the way you go through The Witcher 1 is like very sectional. You go from one place to another. So if the creatures just don't happen to be in that part of the world, you're just not going to come across them.
This and all of our other stuff, when we get that remake, is entirely subject to being completely different, because I imagine they're not going to be location locked, or the game's not going to have like the location locked that it did in this like remake.
You don't have to progress through certain parts of the stories just to go to another part of the map. Potentially.
So of course they are from the class Ornithosaur. They occur in the wilderness or near human settlements. They are a natural element of an ecosystem, and they are prized by druids who tame them.
So so let's just take a break here. The fact that they are reptile-like, they're kind of like dinosaurs. They don't feel like other monsters or even other ornithosaurs. They feel more like animals that just kind of exist in the world naturally, even though they're classified as monsters and they weren't necessarily always there before the conjunction. But they are a little bit more natural than, say, a ghost or a wraith or, one of these like really spooky or weird, really strange monsters.
Yeah. Well, like essentially they're kind of like just giant flying snakes. Like, you know, and I guess in the sense of like balancing the ecosystem, because they don't discriminate against their prey, that means that they probably are like they equalize because they go for what there's more of, essentially.
Right.
So like if there's more like prey animals, then it's going to get a bit more balanced from it. But they'll also like go after like natural predators because again, and then even, you know, humans,
right.
Which kind of leads to just like the balance of like, you know, keeping, they don't discriminate. So they're not preying on a certain food source and therefore limiting.
Yeah. All right. So what else do we know?
They are immune to, or they are resistant to stun and poison attempts. Makes sense. A lot of monsters in this game are resistant to stun, and I almost said poisonous, as a venomous creature, of course, poison will have less of an impact on it. And they are sensitive to silver and ornithosaur oil. As far as their attack tactics, they dive at their opponents, try to knock them down, and poison them with venom.
Works for me.
As simple and straightforward it is.
That's what I do to my opponents. What about the alchemy? It's another one of those moments where Toasty just his brain stops.
Yeah. So alchemical components you can get off of them are the toxin, their wing membrane, and venom glands, and they also drop wyvern meat.
As they should, because I bet it's delicious. I mean, they're like flying snakes. People eat snakes, right? So they probably just taste like more snake.
Probably. It seems like some. I mean, I've never had snake. I've had alligator. Alligator's pretty good.
Yeah, like it tastes like chicken.
Yeah, so pretty good. So I imagine that'd be. Or actually, where was this at? Whenever we were doing our like food monster like thing episode. Then we have a bit of an excerpt from the monster book that was released with like the deluxe edition of The Witcher 1. It's got a little bit of cool information, I thought. So ordinary folk often mistake wyverns for dragons. Witchers, however, immediately recognize these flying lizards, which tread upon the ground on two heavily muscled legs.
Right. They don't have four legs like dragons. Dragons have 4 legs and wings. Wyverns or wyverns have 2 legs and like winged arms, like arms / wings.
Yeah. So like, you know, one of the big things about Skyrim that a lot of people will shit talk on the internet is that none of them are actually dragons. They're wyverns.
Right.
But you know, wyverns are just kind of a subspecies of dragon, if we're being honest.
Right.
So,
yeah. You can kind of split the hair different ways, but yeah.
They also know that when fighting this beast, they must avoid the venomous stinger at the end of its tail and its jaws that bristle with deadly teeth.
Clearly.
The concept for the wyvern emerged from the human fear of reptiles. With its flat head and long neck, the creature resembles a snake. Its extended tail only strengthens this impression. The dinosaur-like hump on its back makes it all the more terrifying. The bright colors of the sketch immediately suggest a venomous creature. Thin, long spikes seem to protrude directly from its curved spine, and along with the beast's general posture, serve to emphasize its malicious and treacherous nature.
There's an interesting point in here. The bright colors suggest a venomous creature, which is actually a very common parallel in real world creatures, is that oftentimes, not every creature with bright colors, but like certain types of snakes tend to have brighter colors on them if they're venomous, so on and so forth. Toads, like there's all sorts of types of creatures that the colored ones.
Like some creatures, I mean, it is such a common theme of like brightly colored venomous creatures that like there are even creatures that have adapted themselves to like mimic said venomous creatures so that they don't have to worry about predators, you know, like
things don't mess with them because they think they're venomous when they're not.
Yeah. The one that like strikes the mind is that there's like the coral snake, and then there's the snake that looks exactly like the coral snake, but it's not venomous at all.
Yes.
Can't remember the name of that.
Yeah. King snakes and coral snakes. And it's just the pattern is like blue and
It's
yellow,
like
or
slightly
red and
switched. It's like a
yellow,
weird
or
alternate.
it's like if the red and yellow touch each other, then they're bad ones. If the black is in between the red and yellow, then they're good ones. Or whatever. I don't remember. There's a rhyme that goes with it. I worked at a camp in Florida.
like,
we have these in Florida all over the place. We came across
red
one.
and yellow, kill a fellow.
Yes.
Red and black, friends with Jack, or
Yeah,
something
that's
like
it.
that.
That's it. And I remember working at the camp the summer that I worked at this like summer camp, and we had gigantic alligators out on the lake, but there were snakes. And walking down a path, I was walking right behind somebody, and they happened to notice it. I probably wouldn't have. And they went, "Oh my God." And they stopped like 5 feet away from this yellow and red and black snake crawling across the path. And I was like, "Oh my God, what is that?" And they stopped and they looked at it and they're like, "That's a king snake." I was like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, and we thought for a second, we're like, "Yep, we're not touching that one." And it scurried off into the bushes, and then we just kept going. But like, yeah, it's no joke.
See, I know. I just nearly my thing is I nearly stepped on a baby rattlesnake one time. So
Nice.
which
Ugh.
there's no mistaking those guys. It's just bad. So as for locations that wyverns can be found, swamp, lakeside, fields, and the Cairmoran Valley in the Price of Neutrality module. And sources you can find wyvern information in the Ornithosaurus book, and that same lady that tells you about the basilisk in exchange for milk and beer. Milk or beer.
Right. Yes, I remember.
So same sources of information for these guys. So.
Yeah. Okay, so we have, just like many of these other monsters, none of them show up in Witcher 2, because Witcher 2 is a much more like culture, people-focused game, very less open world and any of that kind of stuff. But in The Witcher 3, we've got lots of different monsters, so they show up again here. And there's a bestiary entry.
Do you want to read it in one of your funny voices?
Oh God. Well, who is a lecturer of natural sciences? This is from Albina Totenkampf, lecturer of natural sciences in Aretusa. I feel like Totelkampf should be like a German. Like I can't do a good German. I can't do a funny voice for this one. But it says most dangerous of all are the royal wyverns, or as they're called in some circles, the royal pains in the arse. So, and then it goes on here. I'll read the rest of it. It says, wyverns are often mistaken for dragons, like we mentioned before, and though they are much smaller than their more famous kin and do not breathe fire, they are likewise extremely dangerous monsters. Especially feared are the so-called royal wyverns, who, like their namesake monarchs, are exceptionally ornery and extremely deadly, just like a king. So, yeah.
Yep. And of course, this is in line with, the ornithosaurs to Witcher 3. They are now draconids. And of course, they have the variation of the royal wyvern. And they occurrence. Wyverns have been spotted nesting in northeastern Valin, though it must be stressed that these beasts are highly adaptable and have been sighted across the entire continent and the Skellige Isles. So
great. So
they're
just
always
like,
worry about them, regardless of where you go.
Right. They're just like everywhere. Here, and I can jump in with some of the stuff if you don't mind. I'll read some stuff too. So they are susceptible to golden oriole, grape shot, draconid oil, and ard. So why do you think ard is useful against them?
Because as with all like flying enemies, when you time your ard, it like blasts them out of the sky.
It
like really messes up their flight pattern. It's just
right.
They teach you in like the beginning of Witcher 3, like, if something's flying at you like that, shoot your crossbow at it. But ard does the same thing.
I always just use the crossbow. I always just like shoot them and then they land or they crash and then you fight them on the ground.
I generally give up on the crossbow unless it's like shooting it like drowners underwater, because, it just one shot kills them, which is super useful.
Yeah.
But like the crossbow is like so slow in like as far as like reaction time. Sometimes it's just easier to just click like ard and then bam, you're good.
Yeah.
And I think the range of it's a bit more like forgiving.
Yeah,
like the crossbow sometimes throws off, like as far as the aim, sometimes it goes, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like
there was a button combination where it would like auto target on the maybe that's only on keyboard and mouse. But there was something about crossbow where there were times where like
it does auto target,
right? Like
it's like a weird thing that sometimes doesn't always work. So you're like, I go to shoot the crossbow and then I just get hit in the face by this thing anyways.
Or like needs to be reloaded, so it takes longer than you expected, and then your timing's off. Yeah.
Yeah. So with Ard, you can just it's there.
Just blast
and
them.
Your signs come back so fast on a tap, so might as well.
Right. So the loot that's available in The Witcher 3 from the Wyverns is dragon scales, even though they're not dragons, monster blood, monster bone, monster brain, monster claw, monster eye, wyvern eggs, wyvern hide, wyvern mutagen, and wyvern trophy. Lots of different stuff. It's kind of weird that they've got dragon scales. It's probably just big scales, but they call them dragon scales.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's similar. Typically, a wyvern will attack from the air, attempting to knock its prey down using its wings. After it lands, it will attack with its tooth-filled beak in an attempt to draw attention away from its most deadly weapon, the stinger, that can be found at the end of its long tail. A single strike. A single strike from this carries risk of poisoning from powerful toxins. Even a witcher will experience wrenching pain when injected with the venom, so preparing ahead of time with golden oriole is suggested. Yeah,
stay away from that tail. It's like a scorpion kind of tail thing. Okay, so let's go a little bit more into the combat tactics. If you were actually facing off against one of these, what do you need to do?
So wyverns are, like we've been saying, quite venomous, and they are able to spit their venom from a distance, and while also being able to inject it directly via its stinger. So, of course, golden oriole, have that ready, because this thing, you're not safe far away, you're not safe up close. Just
you're going to get hit.
Prepared.
You're going to get hit. You need this in order to deal with the venom.
Yeah. They will fly around their prey well beyond crossbow range before they will swoop down at breakneck speeds in an attempt to claw at their victim.
Claws and teeth and poison. Jeez.
Yeah. This is scary dudes.
Scary dudes.
Ard and Grapeshot can bring a wyvern to the ground, though they are tough enough to be resistant to crossbow bolts. But other more lethal munitions can force it to the ground.
So hit it with a big shot of some sort or blast it with Ard.
Yeah. Which another thing to point out here, because it's like you often, Grapeshot against flying enemies, right? Like it's like, is there anyone else that just doesn't like to even try throwing bombs at the fly? Because I feel like it's so close by the time that you want to hit it.
I never do that. It
blows up in your face. So I'm just like, no, I don't like it.
No, I save all my Grapeshot and stuff for tossing down into like holes in the ground, like the nests that are like holes in the ground or like that kind of stuff.
Sometimes I'll use them, but it's like if I'm far enough away, but if flying enemies go so fast that once you throw it to hit them, they're in your face and therefore you bombed yourself. So,
so what about when they're on the ground? Yeah.
Okay. Once on the ground, a wyvern will prefer to strike with the talons on its feet, its teeth, and its tail. It is possible to parry the bites, but if unsuccessful, the consequences can be deadly. They don't appear to be very good at dodging while on the ground. An unending series of fast attacks has been seen to keep them off balance, so they don't attack right to the point that they die.
So get on them, stay on them, but don't let them hit you.
Yeah. And just keep just fast attack, and it staggers them. So, but it kind of luckily mitigates here. So
so that's the Wyvern from the games and the other references, but we still have the mythology to go into, which is always a lot of fun because of the way this stuff works out sometimes. So stay tuned for that. But first, we got to go thank our patrons. So we'll be right back.
Very well. Let us get this over with. Something has infested my vineyard.
Great. Let me go prepare my something oil then.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show. This is our patron break, and thank you to all 16 of our current patrons. We don't have anybody new this week, but if you'd like to sign up and join us for a future episode, like being a tier for Leshin and be able to chat with us on the end of the month episodes, then you're welcome to do that, because that's coming up on the 30th, just 2 weeks away from the current recording. Today it's the 16th as we record this on Monday, live streaming it on the internet. So thank you for joining us, chat. And if you'd like to do that, head over to patreon.com/Witcher Lorecast. You can get ad-free episodes. You can join us on future episodes, shirts, and we've got new shirts that we're working on with some really cool new designs that will be rolled out, I believe, next month, maybe. It's coming very soon. I'll double check it. But that stuff will be available for patrons and everyone who helps support the show. So thank you very much for those of you who do. And that includes our higher vampires, Jared M. and Ben of Temeria. Thank you to both of you guys. You get shout outs every week. And if you would like to help us in other ways, leaving a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts is a great way to do that. We will read out 5-star reviews in the future, or you can leave us a rating on Spotify or whatever platform you listen on, as long as there's the ability to do that. And we very much appreciate it. So thank you to everybody who does that, everyone who shares the show with your friends, whatever you guys do. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for being here. That's it for the middle of the show this week, but stay tuned because we got more stuff to talk about with Wyverns and mythology.
You smell of death and destiny, heroics and heartbreak.
It's onion.
Right, yeah.
All right, so we've got the history and the mythology of the real world stuff. And as with many of the things in The Witcher, it gets pulled from typically Eastern or Western European mythology. What do we know about wyverns historically?
So, although the first depiction of a wyvern has been lost to history, it is clear from bestiaries and alchemical texts that these little dragons were well known throughout Europe as early as the medieval period in the 5th century AD.
Yeah, so this is really a really cool point. The fact that we're doing a bestiary episode on fake creatures from story and video games and things doesn't mean that bestiaries did not exist in nature. Or in the real history of the world. Like, we've talked about this a lot, how ancient times or medieval times, like monks would write bestiaries, and you'd have like chickens and bears and things like that, but then you'd have like wyverns and like basilisks, like creatures that we know don't really exist in our world, but they thought they might have back then.
Yep. So some scholars have speculated that the wyvern may have sprung from Roman war banners, which would have been seen by the early Europeans when Rome's conquering forces began to spread north. This idea is supported by the fact that the etymology of the word wyvern can be traced back through French to the Latin word vipera, which would have been used by the Romans.
Oh, interesting. So vipera, same foundation for like viper, for that, basically venomous snakes.
Yeah. Which, like, I'm not like an expert, but how is the Roman Empire was like even like way earlier, right?
Yeah.
As far as like history goes.
Yeah. So like the Roman Empire hit its height around the 3rd or 4th century. So like the medieval period is hundreds of years after that. So the idea that like if you track the development of Europe stuff, right? You've got the Greek period, you've got the Roman period, and then the Roman Empire starts to fall apart by about 600 AD. And then you end up with this kind of dark period afterwards where all the places that they had settled through Northern Europe start to disassociate with Rome or get taken over by quote unquote barbarian tribes or whatever. So the education and the influence of Rome kind of continues on a little bit, but not as formally. So those people from those groups would have been familiar with the symbolism and even the language that the Romans left. So something like seeing a flying serpent on a banner, like this is talking about, of armies from hundreds of years ago, people would still be talking about, oh, the armies of the flying serpent or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So, and the language, like, for example, modern French and Spanish are both highly evolved versions of Latin, just over longer periods of time. So vipera would have passed on. So wyvern having a foundation in that. There's a word etymology kind of continuation there too.
So as for heraldry, because we actually get to see like the idea of like dragons and, therefore wyverns in some cases are used on a lot of things. There's a lot of heraldic crests. So wyverns are believed to have appeared on English war banners as early as the 8th century, when Wales was represented by a red dragon and Wessex by a gold dragon. By the 16th century, the popularity of this little dragon as a symbol of courage and strength had earned him a place on the coat of arms of many prominent families in Wales and Wessex. By the 19th century, English companies nationwide had begun to use the dragonnet as their logo, and today he can be found as a logo or mascot around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are very common in old like symbolic heraldry and banners of these minor like houses that fought for power.
And here is a thing that I found that I thought was a very interesting little fact. Dragons and wyverns are said to be preternaturally hot. The whole like fire breathing thing. Mm-hmm. So according to a 17th century authority on heraldry, who in turn took his cue from the prophet Jeremiah, the fact that wyverns and dragons are always shown with their mouths open in like, heraldic emblems is because it's as if they are gulping at cool air.
In order to keep themselves cooled down.
Yes.
Huh.
I was like, that's an interesting like fact there.
Weird.
So moving on to, the real fun stuff, the physical resemblance between wyverns and dragons has led many people to believe that these creatures come from the same family. That may be true, but they are still very different species with important physical differences. First and foremost, wyverns have 2 legs, whereas dragons have 4, or in some ancient descriptions, none. The smaller serpent's legs are also more bird-like, long and spindly, with widespread toes and sharply curved talons, where a dragon's legs are more reptilian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Not only do their legs give them a unique look, they also give them a unique style of movement, hopping, hovering, and pouncing instead of crawling.
Kind of like the way some birds will like hop along the ground rather than walk like a reptile would.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm just trying to like, just like a giant dragon like crawling towards you to kill you sounds like terrifying. I don't know. I'm wondering if like some wyvern just was like hopping at me. I wonder if I'd be
like
scared.
It's probably doing like a weird snake bendy thing with its neck while its feet hop forward. Oh man. Ooh.
Oh man. I don't know. I'd probably die still because I'd be like, oh man, you're cute. Let me pet you. And then I would die. But it's just kind of like, oh, look at this little guy. Second, the wyvern's tails have a unique barbed end. Some texts claim that this barb is actually a stinger that can deliver a painful dose of poison, which would give them one weapon in their arsenal that dragons don't have. Other texts describe dragonets who have adapted to semi-aquatic life by developing a more fish-like tail. So
the poison tail is a direct pull into The Witcher from like mythological sources.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, what's the other thing? Is it a manticore? Is this the other like significant like mythological creature with like a poisonous tail? Oh, maybe. I thought you were because manticores have like scorpion tails, I think, or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But it's like it is like a kind of a unique like facet of things. Mm-hmm. So, of course, this isn't the manticore episode, so maybe some other time.
Right.
So special abilities. Wyverns share many of the same abilities as dragons. They are outstanding flyers, and they can often be seen circling high in the sky as they scout out treasure to plunder. When they manage to make off with a new trinket, they carry it to their lairs where they hoard their treasure. Their hoards, however, are not nearly as impressive as true dragon hoards, which have been known to make men sick with greed and envy. Mm-hmm. Comically, the little dragonets will collect anything shiny, even if it is nothing more than a cheap spoon.
So they're like the budget dragons. They're the budget dragons of the dragon world.
couldn't afford the same, like all the legs couldn't afford the same horns.
Right.
Yeah, it's just like,
look at my hoard of golden coins. I've got a bunch of shiny little scrap pieces of metal.
just imagine just a wyvern sitting on a pile of silverware. It's just like that's where they like laid out for the naps.
Or even worse, just like the tabs of like cans of Coke that just like get broken off and thrown, just little shiny pieces of aluminum that aren't worth anything. Yeah.
They are fearless fighters, even more so than their calculating cousins, who usually only fight when the odds are in their favor.
That's because dragons are smart.
Yes.
Right?
Wyverns will plunge into battle with any enemy, regardless of how powerful it looks. Whether or not the little serpents can breathe fire is hotly debated. Certainly, they don't contain an inexhaustible supply of fire like the mighty dragon does, but some texts do describe wyverns spouting small balls of flame at their enemies or onto a straw roof. They have even been nicknamed fire drakes in some medieval bestiaries.
So just like with all of these things, there's so many different sources and so many different little communities that had their stories. So some of the communities were like, no, they're poisonous. And other communities were like, no, they breathe fire. And then can you imagine being in a pub in like the year 1600 and just like somebody's like, I saw a wyvern the other day. It burned my house down. And then the other person's like, wyverns they don't breathe fire. They're not like dragons. And they're like, people just getting mad at the pub at each other about a mythological beast, and none of it's true anyway.
Oh man, honestly, I'd love to watch that though. I'd love to watch just part of just like a random scene in a movie.
The old guy in the corner is like, arguing. Boys, calm down. Only real dragons breathe fire. It's like, shut up, old man.
Honestly, that's kind of like the episode where like Geralt goes to Sintra, where he like invokes the law of surprise, but like those two dudes are like arguing about how many like heads that one thing has, and they're just arguing back and forth. There's just like Geralt's just over there like, you're both idiots. You're both
right. Shut up. You're both idiots. Yeah.
Finally, the wyvern's deadliest weapon of all is their breath. Even if they can't breathe fire, they can breathe something far more dangerous, pestilence. They spread contagious disease wherever they go, and during Europe's Dark Ages, they were blamed for spreading the Black Plague, a grotesque disease that claimed millions of lives.
Yeah, like even in the conservative numbers, like a third of the population was just destroyed. Yeah, but this tracks because people were trying to come up with all sorts of different explanations for why this disease ravaged the countryside, and came back in many places multiple times. So the idea that like, oh, it's the devil, it's demons, or it's a dragon or a wyvern or whatever, totally tracks. Because as we've seen with many of these things, when it comes to the mythology, somebody just made crap up and then somebody else just spread it around, and then now it's in a book somewhere.
Hey man, you don't know, like maybe the wyverns are just only active like during the 20th year of a century, and that's what happens.
You think COVID was a wyvern pestilence?
I mean, isn't there a thing like didn't the Black Plague happen like the 1820s, and then like 1920s there was another big disease? Oh,
there've been multiple like diseases. The original Black Plague, I believe, was in the 13 somethings. I don't know. I'm not remembering anymore. 13 somethings, and then it recurred in the 15 somethings, and then like there's like maps and things that will show you like it actually tracks north. It starts in the south and then moves north, and then the recurrences of it happened and all of that. So yeah. But
it just shows that people they always look more up than they look down, because as we know, the real reason for that was like the disease that the rats spread, right? So
it was trading across long distances and a disease that jumped from rats to people. But that's what diseases do. And there's kind of just this cycle of just other diseases that come in and out. But so that's it for the wyvern. Big snake-like serpents that breathe venom or fire or pestilence, and have a sharp pokey tail, big claws, 2 chicken legs. Still not something we really want to mess with.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really like anything with chicken legs, let's be honest.
I don't even eat chicken at dinner.
No, well, I like chicken though, but it's like, just generally speaking, like all the things that like they're never good. All the mythological monsters with chicken legs are never good because it's like, these things, basilisks are usually depicted with chicken legs. Then you get to like Baba Yaga, who's normally depicted with chicken legs in her hut. Right. And it's like, it's never good. If you got chicken legs and you're like, it's bad.
If you have chicken legs and you're not a chicken, or goat legs and you're not a goat, it's bad news. Like, that's a sign right there. Stay away from it.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, this was fun. Another bestiary in the books. I don't know that I'd like to fight one of these things. They're the kinds of monsters that it seems even kind of a little crazy that witchers can take these things down, because they are just, they're large, they're extremely deadly in lots of different ways, very capable, very quick. They can fly. These are just one of those, like, really, like, a human being could do that? Take one of these things on?
Granted, in like The Witcher 3 specifically, I honestly would rather fight these things than, cockatrices, because like at least Golden Oriole's just like bam, like poison's taken care of. But with cockatrices, that bleeding effect they do it sucks way more, in my opinion. It's rough.
Yeah. Well, or even just a monster being this big, having the talons, like being able to fly, and like the talons of an eagle. Have you seen like the size of an eagle's talons? They're huge. Oh yeah, they're huge. Yeah, they're bigger than your hand. Like, and then like just the hand, like the foot like part. Most
generally,
of a bald eagle,
of prey, you have to wear like those like the arm guards in order to like even like bird tamers and stuff. They like put on those big thick leather arm guards, because like if it like the bird perched on their actual arm, it'd like tear it up, because the talons are so wicked long and sharp. So imagine that times what
you size that up. Like that's just, and then the beak with the teeth inside it, like a goose. We've talked about geese before and how terrifying that is. Oh God, like one clip of your shoulder and now your arm's falling off. Like that's the scale that we're at here, right? So like you really genuinely have to be faster than it. You have to have some other abilities, because you can't just block it with your sword. That's not going to work, right? So you need some protection from your signs or whatever. You need to be able to like get it unawares. And that's part of what's so fun about these books and the stories, is that the Witchers have to be very smart about the way they don't just overpower these creatures, because they can't. So they have to be very, very smart about the way they hunt them, which makes them so exciting,
For sure.
Yeah. So that's Wyverns this week. Toasty, you have an idea where we're going to go next week?
We're going to continue our tour, and despite the state of that show that we are done discussing and won't be bringing up, it takes place in a very prominent location, and it's right there next to Temeria, which was the last place we visited. So moving on to Sintra.
Zintria? We're going to Zintria?
Zintria.
Zintria. Yes. Cool. No, that's cool. That's a really cool location with a lot of cool history and all sorts of fun stuff. So that'll be exciting. And then the week after that, we're having our patron chat. So patrons, if there's something you guys would like to discuss, feel free to start sharing some ideas on the Patreon. And if you're not on the Patreon and you want to talk about Witcher stuff, join us on there. Robots Radio Patreon. There's a link in the show notes, and you can just, there's lots of channels, lots of different shows, but a lot of friendly people too. So find the Witcher Lorecast channel and post some stuff and see what you can get people to respond with. It'll be a lot of fun. You got anything else going on, Toasty?
Yeah. So, as always, follow us at the Witcher Lorecast on Twitter. And if you're into cyberpunk, I do both the Cyberpunk Lorecast with Genesis. If you're interested in another lore heavy world, we're also doing a tour of the globe right now and talking about the different, regions of the world, in Cyberpunk. And then I also do the Cyberpunk actual play cyberpunk apostrophe D, if you're interested in something like that. So
yeah. And then all of my shows, robotsradio.net, including the ones Toasty mentioned, all the other shows on the network, but also mine. So if you want to check out any of the other Lorecasts about all sorts of awesome stuff like Lord of the Rings or Elder Scrolls or Fallout or Mass Effect or Starfield, we're getting closer and closer to an actual announcement for when that's coming out. So if you're into video games, you're going to be playing some Starfield Lorecast will be gearing back up once we have more info. It's kind of in stasis right now, but we'll be doing that as well. And thank you everybody for tuning in. This will be it for this episode. So until next time,
stay safe on the path.
I'll see you guys later. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Witcher Lorecast. We'd love to hear about your experiences with the games and the books and the TV series and all your thoughts on everything. Please check out the Robots Radio Discord and follow us on Twitter at Witcher Lorecast.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.